Kolani, a very good morning to you. Some skepticism ahead of the budget speech today. What can be expected?
Good morning, Mpo. You're absolutely right. There's always a lot of skepticism ahead of the budget speech because he can't, as the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, satisfy all the needs. We have caught up with the ANC MP earlier on, feasibly, and now it's time to catch up with the opposition benches, and that is the Democratic Alliance. And I'm joined now by Dion George, who is the DA MP and the spokesperson for the party on the matters of finance. Mr. George, thank you very much for your time this morning. You have, as the DA, already presented, as has always become, now accustomed to us getting the alternative budget from the DA as far as what you would do if you were in the hot seat in the finance minister's office. Tell us a bit more about this year. What is the DA saying the minister should do, or the alternative budget by the DA?
What is different this year, which is a very big thing, is that we're going to have an election very soon, and there is a very strong possibility that we may well end up with a coalition government. So we have to be ready to govern if that does happen. So that is the very exciting difference this year. But what we've done is we focused, as usual, on very important matters such as growth. Our economy is not growing. We have a growth problem. So we've set out various incentives for small, medium, and all businesses, basically, to make sure that our economy can grow. So provide tax incentives for business to do the business of business. So, for example, you're not going to get jobs from government. It's not possible to do that. We see what's happening with the state-owned enterprises. They're all bankrupt, and government keeps bailing them out with money that we simply don't have. So focus on incentivizing business to grow our economy and then get the sustainable jobs that we need to lift our people out of poverty, and also to alleviate the never-ending cost of living crisis that's driving food off the tables of South Africans and actually leaving South Africans hungry. There are 5 million hungry children in South Africa, according to the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. So we have a major problem. The DA's solution to that is managing debt, get it down, make sure that we can cut spending in the right places. So, for example, stop bailing out the state-owned enterprises, cut the public sector wage bill, and make sure that also government does not raid the reserve at the Reserve Bank. What the minister might do today is to tell us how the government is going to take a portion of the risk reserve from the Reserve Bank to fill the debt hole that they've created. Now, that's not going to help. The problem is growth and spending, and the DA has a solution to both. So stimulate growth and then cut back on spending on those things that you don't have to spend on. Then we won't have to have tax increases. The DA has been very clear. We do not support any tax increases because it is not necessary. What we need is to restructure our economy so that government focuses on building infrastructure and facilitating growth, and business gets on with business, and then that the people will then get into jobs. We'll have then lesser of a need for social security. The DA, of course, absolutely guarantees the grants that are currently in place. We also believe that it is very much necessary to increase the child grant to the poverty line because children are not getting enough nutrition in South Africa. Also, very importantly, we will implement legislation to have Scorpions 2, and that's basically a crime-busting institution. That will be an independent institution so that we can actually get crime and corruption sorted out and also get South Africa off the grey list, because the grey list is actually getting in our way of attracting foreign direct investment. So we need foreign direct investment, we need to stimulate domestic savings, we need to manage our debt, and of course we need government to make the most sensible decisions. And we believe that a DA-led government is very much capable of doing that, as we set out in our alternative budget.
It's an election year, as you've said. What do you think will be the cause of the minister not to go the route that you are saying as the DA, taking into account that it is an election year and there are those pressures to appease the masses?
Well, yes, the minister's in a very difficult position, but that is actually a government-created problem that they created for themselves that he now has to try and wiggle out of. There is no way that the minister can increase tax, especially not in an election year, and we certainly believe that that is something that he cannot do. South Africans cannot bear that. South Africans are battling to put enough food on their table. They're battling to pay their school fees. They're battling to pay their home loans. They're battling to pay their car loans. South Africans have had enough. They can't anymore. So there's no space to tax. So we don't believe that he will do that. What we do believe is that he will raid the reserve of the Reserve Bank and take half of that and try and cut back on debt. But that's still not going to be enough. So he's going to have to cut back on spending, and it's going to be stealth spending. So what he might well do is cut back on the provinces, and then that knocks on to education and healthcare in all the provinces. So it isn't that visible, but yet it's a massively big problem. What the minister can do today is he can just stop bailing out the state-owned enterprises and inject the private sector into the state-owned enterprises. But of course, that political move he cannot make. So he's stuck between a ravenous government, basically, that has a never-ending appetite for the people's money, the public sector wage bill, for example, that is bloated, and the state-owned enterprises. He should cut that, but he won't, because politically he can't. So the people are going to have to bear the brunt of that. And that, I think, is the conundrum. What the DA's proposal is fundamentally different is, cut the spending. Cut spending on the SOEs, cut back on your public sector wage bill. You then have more space to provide the service without having to increase tax and also not having to raid the Reserve Bank. And that is the fundamental difference between the DA and the ANC's offer.
Mr. George, thank you very much for your time. Well, Mpho, you heard it from the DA saying that do not raid the almost 500 billion rands that is in the Reserve Bank as the reserves in order to actually close that gap when it comes to the funding that the National Treasury is facing, but a myriad of other things that the DA says as the position must not be done. And in the alternative budget, there's a lot more different things they would rather do. Back to you in studio, Mpho.
Let's thank you and leave it there for now as we continue, of course, throughout the course of the day and the morning, for the very least, to get some reaction on the ground ahead of that budget speech.